to English 103, an introduction to college writing. I'm your instructor, Claire Barker, and I want to give you a course overview and a chance to get to know me. So all of my videos and PowerPoints are going to have an agenda so that you can navigate how you see fit. So if there's something you specifically want to look at, you have the chance to know about where it's going to be in the video. Today's agenda, I have a welcome so you can get to know me a bit. I want to look at our course objectives. I want to look at our assignments, and I want to share my approach to grading and feedback and discussions so that you're ready. So first off, most likely in the background, you're going to hear some funny, silly noises and quite possibly some snores. And those are going to come from Harry Boethius and Matilda Rose. My husband and I rescue English bulldogs, and these are our babies through the years. And then a little bit about me, I like to do handcrafts, and I like to do fun things with my hair. So you never know what color it's going to be next. What I've done for my education is something I like to share with you because a lot of times we feel a little bit sort of pressured to stay within one specific career area. And if you find that when you're 18, that's amazing. Which doesn't always happen, and the world is always growing. When I was starting out in college, online classes didn't really exist, and yet here I am in a career I love that's an offshoot, that's something that didn't happen way back when. I have gone all the way through my coursework in medieval studies, English literature, so that's my main focus, but it's not generally what I teach. But back in the day when I started school, I started in pre-professional architecture because my family is in construction and that's what I was familiar with. But over time, I figured out that that wasn't really me, that I love stories and exploring those. So together, I think we can all keep learning amazing things. In 2010, I switched from secondary education, so K through 12, but generally high school and middle school, to college and university courses. So 2010 was the start of that. I started in mathematics because I have enough credits in there, thankfully. I love working on math, and I just finished doing geometry with my niece. So there's so much fun out there to explore. But I started in on English composition and literature, and that's generally what I teach. And I moved online in 2012. I loved this verse here where it talks about in Proverbs a gift. Because it may feel like, oh, you have your instructor on that far side and they have all this knowledge to give you. But I feel like instead it's how Matthew Henry describes it here, presents made even by inferiors to those who are above them and have much more than they have. Each one of you comes into class with so many insights and so much of a life lived, and I get the chance to work with you as you explore another step in that process of growing into who you're going to be. So you are the gift givers, if you ask me, because I gain so much from each of you every single term. So I'm excited to get to know your careers and where you want to take them and to learn more about them with you. So I look forward to the gifts that you're going to give, and I will give you my humble insights and knowledge in the middle of that. Every course is going to have objectives, and it is so good to look at these. It's going to give you an overview of what are sort of the aims and concepts of that course. It can often feel a little disconnected from the student perspective as you're looking at it thinking, what does that mean? So I like to walk through that with students. I like to look at the learning objectives. So we have our course objectives, but we also have our student learning objectives. So I wanted to glance through these, and then I want to look at the assignments because that's where we take these lofty ideas of what could be, of what we want you to gain and process and understand and take away from a course. And then we look at the assignments, which is where we try to put that into practice, where we try to make it reality. So things that we're going to tackle. We want to look at strong communication skills. You're going to need them in every class. Writing is a big one of those. How can we increase that? My aim is always to see you increase in confidence because that is going to get you much further than perfect grammar. That's a good side bit from class, but it's not the be-all, end-all of it. We want to know what these academic essays could look like. What's that structure? It's not just about what you write, but about what you read. So what you read, you're going to find is going to match that structure, and it provides you with the chance to speed read because you'll know what you're looking for, and also recognize that you're fitting into pretty much a time-honored tradition there of how we put together essays. And it gives you that chance to step into that and become part of that long-lived tradition, and hopefully one that keeps going. Then we're going to look at the writing process. We say things like this, we look at that effective writing process, but the effective part is where you say, okay, that's the writing process. It has, let's give it 10 steps as an example. So if there are a possible 10 steps, which ones do you need the most? Which ones do you need in general that are really helpful for you? Which ones do you need for a specific project? Because that's going to change a little bit. That is the overall concept. It's not just saying there's a writing process and you must follow it down to the minutest detail. Instead, we say, look, there are all of these steps. There's all this potential. What do you need? What tools are going to be best for you, and what tools are going to best serve the projects that you're working on? Because those can change as well. I like to think of it as any sort of connections that we have, where we have tools of the trade. For instance, if you're working on a truck, I can't tell you how many 10 millimeter sockets I need. But the 10 mil is always going missing. We need those specific tools more often. I don't need a hammer all that often on my truck, although I do use it. So we're looking at those tools and we're saying, what can we use? We're looking at academic writing. We're looking at implementing academic resources. We're putting all of these into play. Next are the student learning objectives, and this takes those previous ideas and sort of condenses it and presents it in a slightly different way. So for instance, focusing on each stage of the writing process and follow the fluidity of the steps in succession, so that we're saying those are the steps. What kind of order should they go in? How can they help me in the best possible way? So maybe you pick all of the steps, maybe you condense some of them a little bit more than others, but it's about you figuring out what you need. And we're doing drafts. We're going to do just one paper, and we're going to build it from the very bottom all the way through. So let's look at the assignments and how we tackle that. Obviously, we have discussions, but we also have submissions, and I want you to see this particular part. We have drafts. So we're going to have session 2, 3, and 4, where we are building one particular paper. We're increasing what we're sharing. We're increasing how we share that material. And essentially, it comes out to all of these kinds of ideas, like writing a proposal, an outline, doing some worksheets as we play with the concepts, and of course reflections. Never forget those. They're super helpful for every course, and I hope you think of them in terms of projects in your careers as well. And then discussions. Generally, we're going to have one a week. We look at the material presented in class, we consider it, and we respond to the questions ourselves. That's our primary post. And then we say, well, I got this out of it. What did you get out of it? And that's our chance to go into that discussion with our peer responses and see what other people are doing. I always count those 2 peer responses as either a post you make to someone else responding to them, or a discussion you're having in your own thread. So if I make a post and you reply to it, and then I reply to you, and we start having a discussion, then to me, that's exactly what the criteria are. So maybe I didn't leave my post area, I didn't leave my thread, but I am replying repeatedly with substantive comments where I am engaging in that material. So either way, as long as you're getting out there, looking at others' work, or really engaging with others and your own work, we're doing well. And of course, don't forget, in the first session, there are always 2 posts. One, our Get to Know You, where we share about ourselves and our expectations for the course, and the other one where we start tackling course ideas. Then, just to further solidify this idea, check out all of these that build into the same assignment. We have our topic proposal that we're going to start in session 1, and then we're going to do other parts of it all the way through to session 5. Same concept, same topic, but multiple pieces. So 1, drafts are a process. We're going to focus on different aspects each time, with things like an outline, moving into a first draft, a second draft, a final draft. And honestly, by the end, it could be boring. I always find that I'm really excited about a topic, and then by the time I've worked on it for a month, I'm kind of bored of it. So you're doing fine if you find yourself getting a little bored by the end. But we're just practicing. We are looking at these ideas. We are chewing on them and chewing on them and chewing on them. Remember that it's not about perfection. That's one of my mantras for every class. It's not about perfection. It's about growth. Oh, Matilda's going to join us. Hi, Matilda. Thanks. So I wanted to look at my approach so that you know, obviously every instructor is a little bit different. We have grading criteria, we have the course topics that we all share, but at the same time, we have different ways that we tackle that. So for instance, I think of discussions, even though we're typing them at different times, as real classroom discussions. If we were sitting in a circle, we wouldn't pause to say, oh, I think you misspoke. You used that instead of who. Or did you have a period at the end of that sentence you said aloud? We wouldn't do that. It'd be ridiculous and silly. Instead, I like to focus not on things like maybe a typo, maybe a wrong way of thinking about it, but instead as this amazing potential where we're saying, I read this and I started thinking about, and then we share what we're thinking, and other people get to say, oh, well, I thought about it this way, and we have conversations and discussions. So we are going to look for details and examples, but we are not going to be saying, oh, I can't believe you made a mistake there. You had poor grammar, or you didn't cite it perfectly in APA, because sure, you're practicing, but you shouldn't feel pressured to get it right. That's what a discussion is all about. Also, if you find yourself saying, I'm not sure about discussions. Like, what's the purpose here? What's going on with them? Discussions are essentially short answer responses. And so here are 3 different links to give you insights into what that kind of assignment is and how to tackle it, how to feel confident about it. Communication is one of the biggest things that we could ever possibly have. If I don't know what's happening, I can't help you and support you adequately. I want to do that. And you don't have to tell me every nitty gritty detail, but you can say, hey, life is lifing and I need time or space. And there are absolutely things we can do within a course. There are a couple of things we can do outside a course as well. You need to be communicating that. We have things like a late policy for when there is no communication, when we're not connecting with others, when we don't know what's happening. We say, okay, well, there's a date for that. There's a due date, there's a policy, there are the steps to take, protocols. But if we're having a conversation, if we are connecting with each other, then we can find solutions and problem solve. So it's super important that you reach out and communicate. And I too do that because I'm not always perfectly on time or on schedule. So I try to reach out to you as well. If I'm not getting things in the dates I like to get them in by. I always make them by the university deadline, but I like to have them in earlier, especially for drafts when you're going to be working with them, because I know your time is busy. So also on a side note to that, if you have a certain work schedule where you're going to need to work on assignments on certain days, never hesitate to tell that to me, share that with me, and I can make sure yours is graded in a manner that helps that and supports it, because we're all busy out here. Grading and feedback is essentially the same across all classes, but we're each going to tackle it in slightly different forms. One, every class is going to have rubrics or grading criteria. There are 2 different names for them. And it means that every class, every single English 103 class has the exact same grading criteria. And it gives us a firm foundation for our discussions on what your grade could or should look like. I often encourage you to pre-grade, so you can go into that rubric and you can say, as I evaluate my own work, where would I put myself on this chart? And that can help you have a good conversation with me, because you can say, well, I picked this, you picked that, let's talk about it. Next, I like to put comments within your paper. I like to put little comment bubbles, little stars and sticky notes and things. I like to do underlining and highlight areas so you can see. I also like to give you specifics in the feedback bubble. So for instance, let's say there's a comma that's an error. I like to say, okay, here's the comment, here's the issue with it, here's some ways to fix it. Then I like to give you links to other resources so that you have those available whenever you'd like for any kind of situation that involves a comma. And that's just one example among many where I try to give you those extra supports. Feedback is a conversation. So I'm not going to do a complete edit. I'm not going to go through line by line by line on an entire paper. There's a reason for that. I'm not being lazy. One, it is overwhelming if I do a line by line and you haven't asked for it. You can always ask for that, but I find that students get really overwhelmed if I do that line by line. But most importantly, if I find a specific kind of error, I want to point it out for you. I want to give you ideas on how to fix it. I want to give you links so that you have supports on explanations for what's happening and how to approach it in future. But I also want you then to say, okay, I did that one that way. Did I do it anywhere else? And I want to train you to go find that particular kind of problem because we tend to do that. We tend to have specific issues. I tend to do that myself. I work on specific issues one at a time. I look for them. I practice my commas for years, trying to say, okay, every single comma, what is it doing? And that was one of my smaller focuses every time I was working on things. So we're going to have those kinds of issues that crop up. It's just practice and learning and exploring, and it's not the most important thing in the world. It's just one of the aspects of being strong, clear communicators. So I want you to be able to say, okay, she pointed this out. Did I do it anywhere else? Do the same rules apply for fixing this one? Why is it doing that? Because I also love it when you say, I know you didn't like that, but I did it for this reason, because there are always reasons for breaking every single English rule. So that's the conversation I want. I want you to be hunting for those things because I'm not always going to be there. And I want you to feel really confident about finding those things in your own writing. I want you to have the tools you need to fix them and attack them. And I also want you to have reasons behind what you choose to do with your language, with your approach of formatting, all of those kinds of things, so that we're having those discussions. Anytime it's confusing or surprising or strange, I want you to be on there typing that email, sending me a text, asking me to have a conversation about it, because I'm never going to get it perfectly right. And so I need you to say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about right there. Let's keep with the conversation. The moment class becomes miserable, you need to be reaching out. Sometimes class is going to cover things that are complex or slightly difficult or even confusing for a time. But the moment it stays confusing, the moment it becomes awful or overwhelming or miserable, that's when you need to be talking to your instructors. You need to be talking to tutors. You need to be getting that support, because we all need that at different times for different reasons. Reach out, have those conversations, and I can't wait to get to know you better in class.